Section 1. The Duckling. November 14, 1943. The Barents Sea grinds against the frozen docks of Murmansk, Soviet Union. The Arctic wind carries the whine of steel cable and the metallic groan of a Liberty ship's hull. Polkovnik Colonel Grigory Antonov of the Red Army's Quartermaster Corps pulls his Ashanka tighter. His breath hangs in the air, a cloud of frozen vapor. He is here for the American trucks. The Studebaker US 6th. The Studers are magnificent. Simple, powerful, six-wheel drive workhorses that are already becoming the lifeblood of Soviet logistics, carrying Katyusha rockets and artillery shells toward the front. A shadow falls over him. The shore crane swings its cargo inland. But this is not a Studebaker. It is grotesque. It settles onto the ice-slicked quay with a hollow, resonant thud. It's olive drab, nearly 31 feet long, but it's a chimera. It has the high cab silhouette of a GMC deuce-and-a-half truck, but the chassis has been swallowed by a thin, riveted boat hull. 6 truck wheels dangle beneath it, looking useless and fragile. A large, 3-bladed propeller and a rudder are bolted to the rear. Antonov walks a slow circle around the machine, his boots crunching on the frozen dirt. His aide, a young lieutenant who still carries the gaunt look of Stalingrad, joins him. "What is it, Comrade Colonel?" Antonov looks at the manifest. Truck, Amphibious, 2.5 ton, 6x6, GMC DUK. He tries the designation. DUKW, it's clumsy. He's heard whispers from the American liaisons. "They call it the Duck, Utka," Antonov snorts. A duck. He wraps his leather glove on the side. The steel hull pings weakly. "It's a coffin," he mutters. A single Maschinengewehr .42 burst would turn it into a sieve. A bundled Red Army mechanic, his face smeared with grease, climbs into the driver's compartment. His confusion is obvious. The cabin is a nightmare of levers. One to engage the propeller, one to shift the main gearbox, a switch for a bilge pump, and most absurdly, a set of controls and soft pipes connected to the axles. The mechanic reads the American label. It's a system for changing the air pressure in the tires while moving. The mechanic looks back at Antonov and gives a slight, dismissive shake of the head. "Too complicated, Comrade Colonel. It will break." "And where do we get parts for this?" Antonov understands. Soviet doctrine is built on brutal simplicity. The T-34 tank is a masterpiece of pragmatic engineering. Its sloped armor, its wide tracks, its simple V2 diesel engine can be repaired with a hammer and a curse. The ZIS-5 truck runs on any fuel, including kerosene. These machines are built for the Rasputitsa, the sea of primeval mud, and General Moros, the winter that shattered Napoleon. This DUKW is the opposite. It's a hybrid, a compromise. It won't be as fast as a real truck on the road, and it certainly won't be as stable as a real boat in the water. It's a specialist. And in the meat grinder of the Eastern Front, specialists die first. Antonov's mind flashes to the Dnieper crossing just weeks ago. A horrific, bloody victory. Men clinging to logs, paddling makeshift rafts with their helmets, drowning in the freezing water as German artillery shells walked across the river. That was war. This is a parade float. What Antonov doesn't know, what no one in Murmansk can appreciate, is that this toy was born from desperation. When the U.S. Army Ordnance Corps first saw the design by yacht architects Sparkman and Stevens, they too had mocked it. They only approved the prototype after it performed a miracle, rescuing a U.S. Coast Guard crew from a shipwreck during a violent Atlantic storm off Cape Cod. A storm that no conventional rescue boat could navigate. He doesn't know that just 4 months earlier, during Operation Husky in Sicily, these same DUKWS had saved the invasion. When shallow sandbars stopped the massive landing ships, LSTs, hundreds of yards from the beaches, the DUKWS simply rolled off the ramps, plopped into the Mediterranean, and churned past the stalled landing craft. They swam to shore, their tires bit the sand, and they drove inland, delivering 105mm howitzers, ammunition, and fuel directly to the artillery batteries. They were the only things that worked, but here in Murmansk, this history is unknown. Antonov sees only a capitalist gimmick. Send them to the 5th Sapper Army, he orders his aide, signing the manifest with a frozen pen. The Vistula is frozen solid. Perhaps they can use them to haul potatoes. Keep the Studebakers coming. The polkovnik turns his back on the machine, focusing on the real instruments of war still being lifted from the ship's hold. The Dukas, dozens of them now lining the dock, sit silent, their hulls reflecting the weak Arctic sun. They are an American folly. February 17, 1945. The Meuse River, near Maastricht, Netherlands. The water is a slate-gray ribbon, swollen with snowmelt and moving at a treacherous 8 miles per hour. It's bitterly cold. A young U.S. Army private, first class named Jimmy O'Donnell, from the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion, grips the Bakelite steering wheel. His knuckles are white. Keep her nose into the current, O'Donnell. The corporal beside him barks, his voice barely audible over the high whine of the DUKW's engine. You let that current catch your broadside, and we're fish food in Dusseldorf. O'Donnell is driving the 31-foot boat in a river that feels like a liquid freight train. The DUKW, loaded with a dozen tense GIS from the 78th Infantry Division, pitches and yaws. The windshield is folded down, and the icy spray hits O'Donnell's face like needles. He's 19 years old. 6 months ago, he was driving a tractor in Ohio. This is the Rhine in miniature, while Polkovnik Antonov was dismissing the DUKWS in Murmansk. Field Marshal Montgomery and General Eisenhower were facing a terrifying logistical equation. The Siegfried Line was broken, but the Rhine River was a barrier more formidable than any concrete wall. It was the ancient, psychological, and physical frontier of Germany. The Wehrmacht, shattered in the Ardennes, was reforming on the far bank. They were blowing every bridge, entrenching their 88mm flak guns on the high ground, and filling the river with mines. They knew the Allies were coming. A conventional assault would be a bloodbath. They needed to get thousands of men and hundreds of tons of supplies across a wide, fast, and defended river, not in weeks, but in hours. They needed the ducks. The entire Allied rear echelon had transformed into a massive school for river crossing. The DUKWS, which had been relegated to port duty in Antwerp and Cherbourg, were suddenly frontline assets. Engineers and quartermaster drivers were pulled from their units and rushed to training areas like the Meuse. They called themselves river rats. Watch the engine temp. The corporal shouts, pointing to the dash. You're running her hot. O'Donnell eases the throttle. Unlike a normal truck, the DUKW's 270 cubic inch engine is sealed in the hull. Overheating is a constant danger. If the engine dies, the bilge pump dies with it. And the DUKW, for all its buoyancy, is not a good boat. It's a truck that swims. It's top-heavy, has a high profile that catches the wind, and its hull, as the Soviets guessed, is thin. A burst of simulated machine gun fire rattles from the far bank instructors firing blanks. The infantrymen in the back duck instinctively. Don't mind them, the corporal yells. Mind the sound. That's what you gotta learn. The sound of the engine. The sound of the water slapping the hull. She tells you what she's doing. This is what the Soviets had missed. March 23, 1945, 21 o'clock hours. The west bank of the Rhine, near Wesel, Germany. The world is ending. For the past hour, 1,200 Allied artillery guns have been systematically tearing the east bank of the river to pieces. The barrage, code-named the Rhine Stomp, is so violent that the ground itself shudders. Private Jimmy O'Donnell feels the vibration not in his feet, but in his chest. His DUKW, the Lucky Lady, is tucked into a water-filled ditch, engine idling with a low, coughing rumble. The air is a toxic fog of cordite and pulverized earth. He's assigned to the U.S. 30th Infantry Division, Old Hickory. In the cargo bay behind him, a dozen G is from the 117th Infantry Regiment sit shoulder to shoulder, their faces shadowed by their helmets. They are silent. They're the first wave. A whistle shrieks. A green flare arcs over the trees. This is it. Go, go! A lieutenant screams, slapping the side of O'Donnell's DUK. O'Donnell shifts the massive transmission into gear. The Lucky Lady lurches, its 6 wheels spinning in the thick mud before catching. He follows the 2 small blue blackout lights of the DUK-W in front of him. They move out of the trees, down a hastily bulldozed ramp toward the blackness that is the Rhine. The river is 400 yards of fast, freezing cold death. The current here is a muscular, invisible enemy. O'Donnell hits the water at speed. The DUK-W plunges in with a gut-dropping splash. The 10-ton vehicle lurches, and for one terrifying second, it feels like it will nosedive straight to the bottom. Then, buoyancy catches. The hull lifts. The propeller, already engaged, bites the water. O'Donnell is no longer a driver. He's a helmsman. The noise is biblical. The artillery barrage has stopped. In its place is the roar of 1,000 GMC engines, and from the far bank, the sudden, frantic sound of the German response. Phut, 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 phut. Green tracers from an MG-42 rip across the water, looking lazy until they snap past O'Donnell's head. The men in the back hunch down, making themselves small. Jesus! One of them screams as a mortar round lands 20 yards to their left, sending up a geyser of water that rains down on them. Keep your heads down! Bilge pump on! O'Donnell shouts, his voice hoarse. He flips the switch. He can hear the pump thumping beneath his feet, fighting the water that's already seeping in from stressed rivets. He grips the wheel, fighting the river. The current is shoving him downstream, away from his designated landing point. He has to crab walk the DUK-W, aiming its nose far upstream, letting the current slide him sideways toward the target. It's exactly what the corporal on the Meuse had taught him. Feel the river, crack boom. A flash of white-hot light illuminates the entire riverbank. An 88mm flat gun, firing at point-blank range. The shell hits the DUK-W 2 boats down. There is no fire, just a catastrophic bang and the sound of metal tearing. The DUK-W vanishes, instantly vaporized, leaving only spreading ripples and floating helmets. O'Donnell's throat tightens. He doesn't look. He keeps his eyes on the far shore, a black silhouette against the flickering orange sky. Hundreds of miles to the east, Marshal Georgy Zhukov's 1st Belarusian front is facing a similar obstacle, the Oder River. They are massing their forces for the final assault on Berlin. Their sapper armies are stockpiling wooden assault boats, heavy pontoons, and raw lumber. Their plan is brutal and traditional. Artillery, smoke, and a human wave paddling, pulling, and dying their way across. The crossing will be measured in days and tens of thousands of casualties. They have engineers. They have tanks. They have Studers. They do not have ducks. O'Donnell feels a grinding crunch. Gravel. He's hit the far bank. We're on, we're on. He stomps the accelerator. The engine screams. He flips the lever to engage the axles. The 6-wheel drive claws at the steep, muddy bank. For a moment, the DUK-W hangs, wheels spinning, engine whining. Come on, baby, climb, he pleads. With a final violent lurch, the Lucky Lady surges up the bank and onto solid German-held ground. The infantrymen pour out of the back, fanning out into the darkness, their M1 Pirans already firing. O'Donnell doesn't wait. He slams the DUK-W into reverse, sliding back down the mudslick, and plunges back into the Rhine. He is one of hundreds in a non-stop mechanical conveyor belt. The first wave is across. Now he must bring the ammunition, then the artillery, then the medical supplies. His war and the DUK-W's war has just become a ferry service. Straight into hell. March 24, 1945, 7:30 hours. The Rhine River. Harris landing site. The sun rises on a scene from Dante. The sky is a bruised purple, veiled by a thick, acrid smoke that burns the eyes and coats the tongue in chemical grit. The Rhine stomp has given way to the methodical, terrifying crump of German counter-battery fire. Shells walk across the water, hunting the boats. Private Jimmy O'Donnell hasn't slept. He's not sure he's even blinked. His eyes are red raw, and his hands are permanently cramped into the shape of the DUKW steering wheel. The lucky lady is no longer an assault craft, she is a mule. And she is bleeding. A piece of shrapnel from a near miss has punched a ragged fist-sized hole in her port side hull, just above the waterline. The patch a wad of canvas and grease is a temporary fix, and O'Donnell can hear the bilge pump running constantly. It's a race. Can the pump push the Rhine out faster than the Rhine can get in? He's in a queue of DUKWS on the west bank, waiting to load. Quartermasters, screaming themselves hoarse, are rolling 105mm artillery shells into the cargo bay. Move it, move it. The 90th Division is screaming for he. They're facing a panzer counterattack near Spellen. O'Donnell nods, his helmet feeling like it weighs 1,000 pounds. He's on his 18th trip. Or maybe his 20th. He's lost count. He plunges back into the river. The DUKW is dangerously low in the water, weighted down by 2.5 tons of high explosives. The river is a demolition zone. A Sherman tank drowned when its LCT, landing craft, tank was hit, jets from the water like a tombstone. Dead cows, bloated and white, spin in the eddies. A DUKW, identical to his own, floats by upside down, its hull pockmarked with bullet holes. This is the DUKW's true test. The infantry assault was the violent start, but this is the war. The pontoon bridges that the combat engineers are desperately trying to build are failing. German artillery, directed by spotters on the high ground, finds the range and smashes the sections apart. For the 40,000 Allied soldiers now trapped in the bridgehead, the DUKWs are not just supply lines. They are lifelines. They are the only thing connecting the new front to the Allied army. O'Donnell makes it across. He doesn't stop at the muddy bank. He doesn't wait for another truck to transfer the load. This is the miracle the Soviets never witnessed. He grinds the lucky lady up the bank, engages the axles, and drives. He rumbles past a cratered farmyard, past lines of walking wounded trudging to an aid station. He follows the white engineer tape inland for half a mile, right up to the gun line of an M7 Priest artillery battery. The gunners, their faces black with powder, give a weak cheer. They are down to their last 3 rounds per gun. God bless the goddamn ducks. A T-sergeant cries, already rolling the heavy shells out of the back. As O'Donnell turns his empty, lighter DUKW around, he sees it. A small convoy of 3 other DUKs is heading for the same battery, but they are different. They are marked with large red crosses. They are ambulances. They too swim the river, drive directly to the forward aid stations, load the critically wounded, and drive back across the river to the surgical hospitals on the west bank, all without the wounded ever being moved from their stretchers. The DUKW is not a truck. It is not a boat. It is a system. It is the missing link that has solved the single most deadly problem in amphibious warfare: the gap, the lethal, chaotic, open-air beachhead where armies die. O'Donnell steers back toward the river. He passes a smoking German pillbox. A grizzled infantry sergeant, cleaning his rifle, looks up at the DUKW. He doesn't wave. He just nods, a gesture of profound, exhausted respect. The gimmick has become the workhorse of the entire operation. In this single 24-hour period, the DUKWS of the 30th and 79th Divisions will ferry over 3,000 tons of supplies into the bridgehead. They are, quite literally, floating the U.S. 9th Army across the Rhine. April 16, 1945, 3 o'clock hours, the Kustrin bridgehead on the Oder River, 70 kilometers east of Berlin. The night is illuminated by 143 massive searchlights. Their beams, angled over the heads of the advancing troops, stab into the German-held Silo Heights. This is Marshal Zhukov's signal. An artillery barrage of unimaginable density, 20,000 guns firing for 30 minutes ceases, and the first Belarusian front attacks. On the riverbank, Major Pavel Kuznetsov, an engineer with the 5th Sapper Army, stands in knee-deep, freezing mud. His face is lit by the hellish glow. His men are struggling with a heavy pontoon section. It's a clumsy 20-foot box of wood and steel. "Davai! Davai!" He roars, his voice cracking. "Push! Put your backs into it, dogs!" 6 of his men, shivering in their Telegreka jackets, shove the section into the sluggish, dark water. The current catches it. A German mortar, firing blind into the smoke-filled river basin, finds its mark. A dull hump is followed by a flash. The pontoon, and the 6 men on it, simply disintegrate. Splinters and water rain down on Kuznetsov. He doesn't flinch. He just turns to the next squad, next section. Move! This is how the Red Army crosses a river. By blood, by steel, by sheer, unflinching mass. They are building a bridge while the infantry attacks ahead of them on flimsy assault boats. For every yard of bridge they build, they pay with a man's life. The Vistula, the Narev, the Oder... All have been the same. A slow, agonizing, brutal expenditure of men and materiel. Weeks later, in a captured Wehrmacht headquarters near the Reichstag, a Soviet intelligence officer from Smersh is sorting through a mountain of documents. He finds a file marked Operation Plunder. It's a German High Command OKH analysis of the Rhine crossing at Wesel. The officer, a man who has seen the carnage at the Oder, reads with disbelief. He passes it up the chain of command. It eventually lands on a desk in Stavka, the Soviet High Command, where it is cross-referenced with reports from their own liaisons with the Western Allies. Polkovnik Grigory Antonov, now attached to the General Staff, reviews the translated summary. His mind goes back to the frozen dock in Murmansk, to the absurd boat truck. He reads the numbers. The Americans had crossed the Rhine River wider and faster than the Oder in a single night. Not just infantry, but everything. They had established a full-sized, fully supplied bridgehead in 24 hours. The key instrument, the DUKW. The report details how these ducks had moved over 12,000 tons of materiel in the first 48 hours of Patton's crossing near Oppenheim. It describes them driving out of the river, past the shattered front line, and delivering 105 mm howitzers fully assembled directly to their firing positions. Antonov stares at a reconnaissance photo. It shows a long, orderly line of DUKWs, tires caked in mud, waiting to load ammunition on the German side of the river. They are not a parade float, they are a conveyor belt. A flexible, mobile, unstoppable bridge that cannot be bombed. He remembers his own words. A coffin. Too complicated. He thinks of Major Kuznetsov's sappers on the Oder, blown to pieces while wrestling with wooden boxes. He thinks of the thousands of men drowned in the Dnieper. The Red Army had overwhelmed the rivers with bodies. The Americans had simply driven over them. The DUK wasn't a compromise. It was a new category of machine. It had solved a problem that had plagued generals since Alexander the Great: how to maintain the momentum of an assault across a major water obstacle. A new request is drafted, this time from Stavka itself, addressed to the Lend-Lease administration. The tone is no longer dismissive. The request is urgent. The war in Europe is ending, but a new war is looming in Manchuria. A war that will require crossing the wide, muddy rivers of China against the Japanese. The Soviets don't just want Studebakers. They want the toy, they want the DUK, and they will get it. But their admiration will turn to imitation. In the coming years, Soviet design bureaus will begin work on their own amphibious truck, a vehicle called the ZIL-485 Bayev. It will be a near-perfect, reverse-engineered copy of the American duck, and a